Much for your time this afternoon. Hello Jeremy.
Hello. Lovely to be here.
Oh man, dit is so groot voorreg om jou in die ateljee te verwelkom. So nogmaals dankie vir jou tyd. So Jeremy, self-taught looper. Jeremy Loops. You mastered live looping by yourself, creating complex layers of sound using guitar, beatboxing, various instruments. Can you please just tell me where the name comes from? Because Jeremy Loops, it's not your real name. Am I right?
No, Jeremy Loops is not my real name. When I was in university, I was studying a business degree. Then everyone called me Loopholes because I was sometimes there, sometimes like a magician, you know. Sometimes around and sometimes at home playing guitar when I should have been at university. I was really circling with that business degree. I didn't enjoy much of it. There were some subjects I really enjoyed, like law and statistics, but there were other subjects I really loathed, like the mathematics components and the accounting and stuff like that. And so in those classes that I didn't enjoy so much, I remember I just used to go and bunk and play guitar. It was when I was learning guitar, I was at university. So I was named Loopholes because I was seldom seen in class, but I always managed to find my way just through that degree, you know. I stuck it out, I got my honors.
Wow.
And the moment I finished my BSc, I basically was like, I'm now going to try and do music full time. During my degree, I actually took a walk down to the musical campus. I remember in my third year, we had an elective subject we could take, and I went down to the music campus and I said to them, I'd love to take a music elective. And they were like, okay, well, have you got like all of your, you know, grades in music? And I said, no, what's the grades? And they were like, no, get out of here. Get out of here.
We're glad you circled with the degree. Dit beteken jy maak vir ons musiek. But I just want to ask you this, because you started as a yacht crew member, am I right?
Yeah, well, I went yachting after university when I couldn't find a job as an asset manager.
What?
No one wanted to hire me. I don't know why.
So we're grateful though.
Yeah, definitely. So before his music career took off, he worked on a yacht, Lisa, traveling across the world, and this experience inspired many of your songs, am I right?
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I said, I finished that business degree and then I didn't know what to do with my life. So I went for some interviews. I went for an interview at Allen Gray and some other banks, and they took one look at me there with my second-hand suit and they were like, no, this guy is, get out of here. And so I went, I'd been sailing before earlier on in my life, and I grew up on the ocean. I felt comfortable there. And so I thought, well, let me go and sail and do some yachting. There's money to be made out there. This was before everyone knew that super yachts was where there was money. And so I found my way onto one of these super yachts. And then I got there and I met such a nice captain. And he said, yeah, you can, after 8 o'clock, when everyone has finished their work day and the gym is finished being used, you know, this was like one of those triple-story mega yachts I was on, and it had a gym on the top. And he said, after 8, when the crew are done exercising, you can turn that gym into your little music studio if you want to practice. And I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so slowly, over a space of 2 years, I basically built that the gym of the super yacht into a little mini studio, and that's where I was learning to play. Essentially, I was practicing, I was writing songs, and a lot of the time that boat was really sailing on the open ocean. And the boss who owned it didn't live on the boat. He was just flying in for 1 week there in the Caribbean, and then the boat would have to make its way back to Italy for 2 months, and then we would be at sea. And I was writing all the songs that I came back for that first album. I was writing in that little studio on top of this mega yacht.
Kan jy dit glo?
Dit is 'n belewenis.
Did you sing that song, I am sailing, I am sailing? But anyway, so I'm glad you mentioned that first full-length album, because your debut album success was, I think, back in 2014 when you released the Trading Change album.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always lovely when your first album does something. I mean, you know what? Yeah, I mean, you never know. As in those early days, I was just happy to be making music, you know, and happy to have a job that I could enjoy, because I think a big part of my search, like it is for many people out there, is I was searching for something to do with my time that I enjoyed, you know. It's easier said than done. And I did lots of really strange jobs before finding my way into music. And when I found music, I held on for dear life. You know, I thought, well, this is it. Like, I can live the sort of life I want, and I can yeah, all I need to do is write songs. And then when I started doing that, I was like, oh, writing songs is really hard. And that first album was eventually due. You know, I'd already been playing live for a few years, maybe since 2011 or 2012. I started performing live. And then it took me 3 years to write that album, you know, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was very happy that the album had some success. And then I remember the even more stressful moment was writing my second album, because then it's like, was I going to be a one-hit wonder?
The pressure is on, yeah.
Pressure's on.
But also your first album is a lot of music that you wrote over years, and then suddenly you have to write many songs that have to be as good or better in a shorter...
Stressful. Yeah. And a lot of acts don't manage to do that transition. So then they are, for all intents and purposes, your career kind of comes to an end. So you can still keep touring that one album, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to write better songs and keep writing good songs so that you can have a body of work. We were just on this European tour, and we were talking about that in our live show at the moment, we've got like 3 songs or 4 songs from each album. And that's a nice place to be, where you don't feel like you have to rely on.
That's a fantastic place to be. You wanted to ask him the question about the looping station.
Yeah, because, you know, a lot of people obviously start with the looping station because they don't have other musicians who can play with them either. So I think a lot of people do that but you were one of the first. I'll never forget. The first time I saw you, I think, was at Park Acoustics in 2013.
Wow, okay.
So it's back in the day.
That was even before the debut album,
And that was just playing with you and your looping station. But obviously now you've got, you know, band members, people who play with you, but you still keep the looping station as part of it.
Yeah, look, there's still a lot of the certain songs that I enjoy performing like that, because what it allows me to do is, like, I can throw my guitar over my back and just like dance around stage and move, you know, not always just locked into playing guitar. But I think in the same way that the loop pedal gave me so much in the earlier days, it also has its constraints. So it's amazing for being a one-man band, but it also, you know, as soon as you can play with other musicians, you start to feel how much more dynamic that is. To have other energy on stage, to be also not so lonely. Like if I was doing all this touring, you know, I worked with Ed Sheeran and we were speaking about this. He was saying he really wishes he had a band. It's like, how do you loop and have a band? And I'm like, you just have to make some compromises, some adjustments, but it's possible to do both. And I think he didn't tell me why he wanted to have a band so badly, but I would imagine a lot of it is just to do with the fact that you're touring then really alone. You're always and you're on stage alone, and it's nice to be on stage with other musicians that you're having a good time with.
And speaking of which, you worked with Ed Sheeran's producer, I think, on the second album, Critical as Water, that you released in 2018.
Yeah.
And this was produced by Will Hicks, who has also worked with Ed Sheeran. How was that process?
Yeah, that was, very cool. I've managed to work with some incredible people over the years, and it always brings like a really new, interesting dynamic. You know, I think you can't get away from your voice and your sound, so the process always feels familiar even when you're working with different people, because you're kind of using the same tools, but they've always got some fresh perspective, and the more professional these people you work with, it feels like the better they are at understanding what is good and what's bad. So, you know, if I'm in studio and we're working with one of these guys and I, you know, maybe start trying to write something, it's nice to have someone who's at that level to just say, oh, I love what you just did. Like, that's really good. Like, go down that lane.
Definitely.
Or to similarly say, like, I'm not sure if that's as strong as what you were doing earlier. So even just, you know, that's the way working with some of these guys is beneficial, is that they kind of help steer with you, you know.
In that direction.
Yeah, they have a good sense for that sort of stuff.
I assume you need a lot of trust in that relationship, though.
No, not really. Because they already are known for being as good as they are. I think if you're working with someone who doesn't have that sort of reputation, then you need to really build trust.
Yeah.
But when you get into studio with like a producer that's worked at the level of the Ed Sheerans of the world,
dan hoef jy hom nie te trust nie, Lisie, want jy weet klaar wat hy kan doen.
They are so good. And you're actually most of the time just trying to keep up with how fast they like to move. So you have a lot of trust. I think that's actually what's nice, is like when you work with guys at that level, you already kind of trust that they've got like 100 hits under their belt. So now it's just like together can you work on something beautiful.
Lisa, ek wil net sê ons het nou al baie mense gehad wat gename drop het hier nie. En nou glad nie dat ek sê Jeremy Loops name drop nie, maar ek het nog nooit iemand gehad wat gesê het, "Hoor ja, by the way, ek het met Ed Sheeran se producer gewerk nie." But you also the co-founder rather of Green Pop. Jeremy co-founded Green Pop, an environmental organization focused on tree planting and also urban greening across Africa. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Look, when I got back from working on those super yachts, I was so disgusted at like what I'd actually seen out there. So my experience on the super yachts was beautiful because it took me closer to music, and it gave me, I made money out there that I was able to come back with and start my music career with, and I got to travel the world. But on the other side of it, I saw some of the most incredible waste. I didn't even know it was possible, you know. Even growing up in a country like South Africa with all of our inequality, it doesn't even come close to what one sees one of these billionaires consume when they own these mega yachts, and also just the nasty stuff you see out there.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's like some pretty evil, dark stuff happening at that higher echelon, and I didn't like what I saw out there. You know, I hated to see the waste and the pollution and the way that the world was just being kind of ruined. And so when I came back here, I got together with some friends who were like-minded, and there were a group of us in Cape Town wanting to try to figure out how do we give back and uplift some of these spaces in South Africa which are really grey. And you know, in so many of our underprivileged areas around South Africa, you see kids growing up in schools that have no trees, no fields. It's hot, and it doesn't cultivate like a pride of place. It doesn't cultivate an experience that's good for young learners and young minds to feel like safe in a beautiful space. So we really wanted to get out there and see if we can't use tree planting as like a platform to bring people from different backgrounds into areas which needed help. And then we would get together with the different schools and we would plant trees. And that's how it started. We would just go and arrive at a school we used to put out these request forms asking schools who would like us to arrive with trees, and then we would go to other private individuals. We even used to at one stage sit in the main roads of Cape Town with like these little tree tags and ask people driving past if they'd like to buy a tree for 50 Rand, and then we would go and plant this tree. And I mean, it's now been 15 years later, and the organization has evolved a lot, but it's still strong. We've got our big Reforest festival, which comes up over Easter in Cape Town, and that is a tree planting festival where we have music, and it's 4 days, and we plant 5,000 trees with about 1,000 people who come to the festival. So it's basically a music festival with tree planting at the core.
Oh wow,
and
that's
environmental workshops, and it's called the Reforest Fest, and it's really beautiful. So Green Pop's still thriving, and there's a little community of people in Cape Town still.
And you know, it's lovely because you hear a lot of people talking about this, but what's lovely about you is you actually putting the action behind the words. Want jy het gesê jy daai plante gaan verkoop, jy het help om die bome te plant ensovoorts. Ek dink dit is 'n fantastiese voorbeeld. But back to the music quickly. Coming Home, let's start there. This is a track from your new album. Teaming up with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. This is iconic actually. So how did Coming Home come to life?
Well, I worked with them on my last album, and I did a song called This Town with Ladysmith, and that was the first time we worked together. And there was a dream of mine for a long time. You know, I know we discussed the song I wrote with Ed Sheeran, but to be honest, like that was for me a small thing that compared to getting in the studio with Ladysmith. I've been such a big fan of their music my whole life. Ed's music I was listening to, but not a lot. Like Ladysmith I'm listening to since I was a kid. And
what's so special about their music?
Well, they're revolutionaries. They're struggle icons. They were around since 1969. They were here through the most difficult times in our history, and they were always singing a song of unity. They were always a band who were a choir known for their message of unity. And it's difficult to have a message of unity in a country that's often so divided. And I think like in my own way, I've tried to... My musical energy comes from that same place, There's a lot of joy in my music. There's a lot of unity and acceptance. I want people to feel inspired.
And it's authentic.
Yeah, it's the way. It's just what comes out, and it's not that I walk around feeling very positive about everything all the time. That's actually not the way I feel. But what I'm trying to put out there is some of that positivity and unity. And so Ladysmith really have always embodied a very high level of that, and a staying power. The fact that they are still around, and that they are like a family. There's the fathers, and there's the sons, and there's the grandfathers. They're all still in the choir. Albert Mazabuko, who's still in the choir, he's like 79 years old now.
Can you believe it?
He's been there since the beginning, and the late Joseph obviously has passed on, but 3 of his sons are still in the choir. And Sabong Shabalala, like one of the choir leaders. I mean, they're just such nice guys. So we worked together on that song, This Town, and absolutely had such a blast doing it. I would inspire any of your listeners, if they haven't seen the music videos that I've done with Ladysmith, they should go and watch them on YouTube. There's one for the song Coming Home, and there's one for This Town, and it's just full of joy, So being together with these guys, I think they were always calling me young blood. So they're like, young blood. And I'm like, but I'm not young blood anymore. Like, I've been in this industry now for more than a minute. But when compared to how long they've been around, I am a young blood, So that was very humbling. And so anyways, we worked on This Town, and I knew I wanted to work with them again for the new album. And I think probably we're going to keep doing that. So this new song just was very natural. I flew up to Durban, and I spent 3 days in studio with them. I had already written some of the nuts and bolts. That's generally how I do it. I kind of write as much of the song as I feel like I have in my mind, and then I bring it to them and let them take over.
Dis young blood saam met ons in die ateljee, also a musical genius. Welcome Jeremy Loops in studio. Bekend vir liedjies soos
Gotta keep your head up, gotta be strong. Something not right, but another way.
Better Together. Asook Postcards.
Just gotta face, we've got a problem. I can't live with, you can't live without.
Daai is 'n lekker een nou, hoor. Ek wil net sê ons speel hom gereeld. En natuurlik Mortal Man.
She said, hold my hand. Nothing I will change the mortal man.
Och, daai is mooi. Listen, Jeremy, you left for the Europe tour and also UK right after the release of this album for a phenomenal tour.
Which is rude. We should be getting the first tour of the new album in South Africa, just saying.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be how it was done, except I didn't flip and finish the album in time. So I was, we booked the tour for Europe months before, almost a year before. And then the plan was to be done and release the album for the whole summer here.
Yeah.
And then tour it all through November, December, and into January, and then go on our Europe tour.
Yeah.
But instead, the album was basically released on like the 29th of
But
January.
we should be proud of that. Jy weet, die man is nou internasionaal en dit is crazy cool. But listen, you are back now for the album media trip.
Yes.
Can I ask you about the Europe and also the UK tour and how it was like?
Yeah, it was lovely. I mean, it's ongelooflijk, really. We go in, in this big bus, and there's 12 people on the bus, not just the band, but you've got lighting guys and a merch girl and a tour manager and a videographer, and it's like a family, and so you head out there, and then in every single day you're in a new city. So the one night you're in Amsterdam, and the next morning you wake up in Munich, and the next day you're in Paris, and it's just like that day after day, and it becomes a little bit like a dream, and it's very tiring, but it's also incredibly beautiful because we're playing these big shows. We've got all of those shows were like 1,500 people, 2,500 people. London show was big. So it's just big shows for us, and we don't have those sorts of venues in South Africa either. That's kind of part of the problem. So in South Africa, when I can't go and play like small little bars because not enough people can arrive. And you would have to do maybe like 10 nights in a row to reach your audience. So you have to wait until you get these big venues, or you can do something in the botanical gardens, or
Sunbed Arena moet jy maar uitboek nou volgende.
Like that, So it's nice for us to go to Europe and be able to play big venues night after night, and let people hear this new album. I worked so hard on this album, Feathers and Stone. It took me the better part of the last 3 years, and so much love. So you really want to make sure that people can hear it, you know.
En ons gaan nou praat oor daai splinter nuwe album, maar jy praat nou so van jou internasionale sukses. Breakthrough song Down South. I mean, ek verwys na daai hit single Down South featuring Mateo Moleko. Ek hoop ek sê dit nou reg. This became a South African anthem, but it also gained international recognition. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. You know, I've been trying to figure it out for years, and there's no real answer to what makes a song move on its own. And I can tell you from working with, you know, seeing behind the curtain and working with some of the big record labels and obviously some of these big producers that, you know, a lot of pop music is not having that same organic magic. The record labels, the big record labels, they just spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and they place the music. They make phone calls. The CEO of this record label is friends with the CEO of Spotify. There's a lot of nepotism and greasing of palms, and the big A-lister artists. Yeah, they almost feel a little. They're like kind of like their assets, you know. And so the music sometimes lacks a certain magic about it, but they can make it still go on all the radio stations and do the thing. Down South was like its own sort of little beast. It never got any real major support. If you look on Spotify, even if I look on the analytics of Spotify, 0 playlists. It's got 0 Spotify playlists. And I've got lots of my later songs when I became known, you know, like Mortal Man. It'll have like 30 or 40 Spotify playlists out there. All my songs get some, but Down South was like before all of that. And it still gets more streams. And it's something about some songs just have something in them, and you can't tell, is it the rawness, is it the certain lyrics, is it everything, is it nothing? We don't know. Like, I understand why it became a South African anthem, you know, and people are listening to it all around the world and feeling homesick. But I don't know why people all around the world also, how it became an anthem for them, like what they were attaching to it.
36 million listens on Spotify alone. Mag ek dit net sê, en hy het nou gesê dit was nie eers op playlist gehad nie, so dit laat jou dink. So let's talk about the international recognition. You also performed at some of the biggest festivals in the world, including...
and I'm jealous because Glastonbury, I mean,
also the South by Southwest. Tell us about that.
South by Southwest is a festival in Austin, Texas, which is, it's just very famous pulls everyone together. It's one of the big ones. And how did you guys find out about Glastonbury?
Ek en Lisa doen ons navorsing hoor.
You're dropping big news there.
Oh, damn it, sorry.
That's okay. Your listeners are hearing it first. Yeah, we got booked for Glastonbury.
Hoor jy lunchpunch
What a
luisteraar?
feeling was that?
Well, I haven't even thought about that yet because we haven't announced it yet. So I'm still learning.
This is exclusive.
I'm still learning how to feel about that. That's the biggest festival in the world, and very few South African artists have ever managed to play that show. It's like it's a very difficult festival to get on. So we're very grateful to have got booked. We're playing in a really cool stage as well. We're playing we're headlining a big acoustic stage on the one night, so it's going to be absolutely crazy.
Oh, Jeremy, that's
if you
amazing.
nail that show, then you are automatically, you're going back to Glastonbury.
Jy gaan teruggaan. Jy gaan
I've got a lot of friends and family over there who are asking if they can be our water boys. Can we please run your merch or whatever? Because you can't get tickets for Glasgow because they sell out.
Yeah. I'm a very good guitar tech, by the way.
Are you a guitar tech?
Saying,
So I need to find a way
Ek sal jou tasse vir jou kom dra. Okay, that was a deal. Listen, let's talk about Wolves also from your brand new album. And this track feels raw and also fearless. So what inspired the wild energy, as ek het so kan stel, of Wolves?
I can tell you one of the main inspirations for the song was I live in a little town called Muizenberg in Cape Town in the deep south there, and we have this big beach, and I'm on a community group on WhatsApp, and there was a message on the group the one night last year that said, hey, there's bioluminescence down at the beach that's like crazy, everyone's got to go and see it. And so half the community of Muizenberg all left their houses at like 9 at night and went down to the beach. And sure enough, the waves were just glowing with bioluminescence. Wow. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it like that, but
never.
It really lights up. The waves are almost like glowing, a greeny blue. It looks bizarre, like something from like aliens, something from Avatar is what it looks like, you know. And so we were all watching this, and then people started swimming, and so now you've got hundreds of people all swimming in the bioluminescence. And on the way home, I said to this friend of mine, a guy called Josh Riley from a band called Grassy Spark, and I said to him, I was like, man, I want to write, why no one written a song about bioluminescence? And he's like, yeah, probably because it's a mouthful, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to write something about that. And so a few weeks later, I showed him this song, and I was like, you won't believe it, I got it into the song. I got this, so you can listen for, you know, in the earlier stages of the song, you'll hear there's a line about bioluminescence. But yeah, it's a song with a lot of imagery, a song with a lot of like just a really beautiful, gentle feel. And you know, on this album, I spent a lot of time in my home studio. My second album and my third album, I was traveling all around the world when I made them, and I was recording in LA and recording in New York and recording here, and it was cool, but it's hard work, and it almost feels a little bit disjointed.
Yes.
And so for this album, I really wanted to just sit fast there in my little home studio.
In your bubble.
And I sat there in the bubble. And songs like this, you can almost hear that they are made really in that space where it's like my guitars, my everything. And it's a little bit more acoustic, but it's still got all of that. I don't know. I love this song. I think it's beautiful, and I don't have anything else to say about it.
Ons gaan net hierna verder gesels. Hou vas aan jou matras daar, want ons moet gou luister na Wolves, en net hierna is ons...
Yo, this is Jeremy Loops, and you're listening to The Lunch Punch on Groot FM 90.5.
He's toured the world, planted trees, and dropped hit after hit. Jeremy Loops joining us in studio this afternoon.
Lunch Punch.
Oeh, en Lisie, ons mag nie vergeet van hierdie een nie.
I won't stop till I've found
Till I've found you as ook gold.
Soon as go walking in the sand.
En hierdie is die Sean P.M. remix van C.I. Wrote It.
And I wrote it for you.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Dis 'n lekker een daai, hoor. Die man is saam met ons in die ateljee. Hy is terug met splinter nuwe musiek en natuurlik splinter nuwe enkelsnitte soos wat jy kan aflei. So independent music success, let's talk about that. Jeremy, you built your career without actually a major record label initially. Proving that independent artists can thrive in the music industry. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a beautiful ride, you know. I think I'm sure I can thank some of my business degree and all of the studying I did, you know, that gave me some extra tools to use when it came to the difficult business of managing music. It really is a lot of business, I suppose, and that's where the record labels come in. So it's not that I have it out against the major record labels. I just think what happens a lot of the time is that, you know, people are trying to make money off music, and it doesn't always match with what music is all about, and it sometimes really doesn't match with what artists are all about, you know. And so some of the best artists of all time have been some of the worst managers of their money and managers of the business.
Yeah.
And then if the wrong label or the wrong manager is there and they're taking advantage, things can get quite out of hand quite quickly. And similarly for record labels, if they sign an act and they think this act is going to be reliable, and then they have a bunch of guys who don't show up or are acting like really like artists, it's difficult. So it's complicated, but yeah, I obviously went on for my last record and signed a major record deal with Universal, and that was very exciting. That was a major record deal from the UK, and lots of budget and lots of money flying around, and it was all very exciting.
Was this now for Heard You Got Love?
That was for the last album, Heard You Got Love.
Yes, in 2000 and I think 2022.
2022.
You dropped that one, yes.
That's right. But I was working with that major label for 2 years prior to that, and I hated it. I really didn't enjoy working with such a big team where all of my songs were spoken about as if they were
a product.
And we used to have our weekly calls, and there were like 30 people. You know, we were one of the premium artists for a moment at this major label in London. And so when we had our weekly call, it was with 30 people, and I had no idea who the different people were. It was like the head of marketing, their marketing assistant, the head of radio, the head of TV, the head of this and that. And you end up just feeling like I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do anymore. And I think for me, I didn't like that feeling, because
back to the roots.
I'd come from a place where I was involved in every decision, and I like that feeling, of understanding where my value is and what to do. And I think the problem with those major labels is that they've got a person to do every job, and then the artist is really left with just like look good and do some nice
and
photos
pitch.
and pitch up, and you have to deliver a certain amount of songs to us every year. And I just didn't like any of that. So I managed to find my way out of that deal very cleverly, and back to I signed again with the independent label that I did my first 2 albums with. So I'm back to being independent, and it feels so nice.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, why are you doing music?
Yeah.
Like, if you're doing music to make money, fine, go do it. But if you're doing music because you're actually using it as art to help and change the things you see in the world that bothers you.
That's it, yeah.
And ask yourself, why did I start? Nee, ons het al baie daai vraag hoor. You wanted to ask him about this brand new album.
Yeah, I just really like the name, Feathers and Stone. It's the two opposites. So what inspired this album?
Yeah, the lightness and the heaviness. I like the kind of contrast there between the weight of some of the songs on this record, and then the lightness of some of them as well. I mean, Wolves has an incredible lightness to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I went through some things these last few years, like we all did. The world is changing. There's a lot of chaos out there, and it's difficult at the moment to feel positive and inspired when so many people are suffering around the world, and it looks like fascism is on the rise and nationalism is on the rise, and it's getting quite confusing to know your place in this world. And and I started writing some songs that were reflecting the depth of the journey I was on, and maybe also it's a product of getting a bit older, and I feel like I've maybe you get a bit jaded, you see some things. And so this record has some of those songs written from that place of they're a bit more serious or a bit more heavy. And I lost a friend, I lost one of my band members during COVID to suicide. This is happening out there, and I think a lot of us lost people close to us during the COVID era. So yeah, I think this album, more than any of my other albums, has a lot of that depth and that raw heaviness that came through at parts of my life that I had to write about. There's a song called The Ledge, which is written about this guy, Fabian Singh, who is a dear friend. And another song called Deep Cuts, which is also one of the more beautiful songs in the record. But then there's also, I think I've also never felt lighter than I've felt lately. My life has been a really nice contrast. It's been a lot of yin and yang. I've been able to really find that hope, and
But you need that to create, nee?
Yeah, you got to. Yeah,
you need both.
You can't have. Yeah, you can't. Exactly, you need both. It's just not always easy to find. You
the balance.
To find the silver lining. Like finding hope in this world for a lot of people is difficult. And as an artist, I think my job is to find it first.
Hoorie, en jy doen dit ongelooflik.
Thank you.
Thanks vir dit. Ons het dit nodig. Ons het 1 minuut oor. Jammer om te sê. So heading back to Joburg in May for a concert. 100%. Please tell me more about that and give me the scoop on it.
Well, the scoop is that we basically haven't even launched it yet, so you're the first to hear about it as well. It's the 17th of May. We found a date and we found a venue. We're going to perform at the Walter Sisulu Botanical Gardens.
Oh, wow.
And I've never played there before, but I know they've got like a little stage. It's kind of like a bit of a Kirstenbosch setup.
Oh, nice.
So I want to, it's going to be a nice outdoor event. I'm looking forward to it. 17th of May. It's the first time we're getting back here in a while. And after that, I'm sure we're going to get back more and more. But for now, that's the show we have in the calendar.
In die ateljee saam met my Jeremy Loops. Let's talk about Love Blood, want dis die liedjie wat ek wil speel net voor die nuus nou begin.
Yeah.
And Love Blood, it drips with emotion, Jeremy. So what's the story behind this powerful track?
Just the fact that love is a journey, and anyone who's ever been in love or in a relationship, or, I especially think about like married couples who've been together 50 years.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an easy road to towards love, and love is as much a journey towards another person as it is towards yourself, you know. And as you, when you're younger, when I was young, I had a really distorted view of what love really was. As I've got older and I've got a few scars and wounds to show for it, you start to learn maybe what this thing is a little bit more. And Love Blood is like a song about this journey. It's like going to war with yourself, with another person, together. It's difficult, it's bloody, and it's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. Luister, dankie dat jy ons saam met jou op hierdie journey vat. Ons waardeer dit. Thank you so much for your time. 100%. Baie geluk met die nuwe album. En ons gaan nou luister na Love Blood saam met Amistad.
Amistad are a German band. They were opening up for me on a tour many years ago, and then they blew up. They're huge now. 2 German brothers, they're twins, and they're doing all the harmonies on this song, and they sound beautiful.
Luister, ons gaan 'n minuut laat wees met jou nuus, maar dis die moeite werd, want Jeremy Loops was hier. Thanks man, ons sien jou gou weer.
Baie dankie almal.